Hey everybody, how's it going? I realized I'm sharing my screen too early, so just hide that for the moment. Lovely to see you all. Thank you for coming along to this week's Coding with Mark session. It is, as the description goes, like a chance to help me build a Python library for abstracting MongoDB data. So I'm going to spend the first probably 5-10 minutes just describing the thing that I've been building over the last few weeks on this stream. We've had, I think, 7 hours of code writing so far, but I feel like we're starting to get to the point where the library, even after that relatively small amount of time, starting to build a data access library that would be useful in a real world application with actually a relatively small amount of code. But part of this journey, part of the thing that I'm really trying to impart to people is the importance of understanding how to model your data in MongoDB and then how to build those abstractions into a specific part of your code base so that any changes you make to the way your data is modeled in your database don't have a cascading effect through potentially a large Python application in this case. So my name is Mark Smith. I'm a senior developer advocate at MongoDB. I've been a Python developer for 24 years now. And I was a Java developer before that. So I have a reasonable amount of experience building, in some cases, some quite large scale data systems, and hoping to kind of pass on some knowledge while experimenting with building this reusable library for using MongoDB. So with that quick introduction out of the way, I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully, there we go. This is probably the best one. Make me as small as possible, make the code as big as possible. So this is the repository in GitHub. You can find a link to this in the description below. This is the library called docbridge. I don't like the name. You know, I often say that I can't write code until I've got a cool name for a project, but this is definitely broken that rule. It's kind of a boring name, but it does maybe encompass the fact that as part of the manifesto, this mission statement, I'm not trying to build an active record implementation. I'm not modeling collections in MongoDB and essentially running a find against those and turning those dictionaries, those documents, straight into objects. I'm really trying to model documents in whatever form they come. So the idea is this models documents in your application, however they get there. So if you're running a complex aggregation pipeline, the end result of that is going to be a document that doesn't match the schema of any data in your database. And I still want this to be useful. It's not just an abstraction over MongoDB's query languages, the find and the aggregation framework, because I like those. I think those are really powerful things. And I don't want anything to sort of get in the way of me running whatever query I want with whatever stages the current version of MongoDB has. I think I have that somewhere here. Well, I've kind of alluded to it in the mission statement. So the idea is it abstracts over the data that you have in your database, but also there should always be escape hatches so that if you really want to dig down into your raw sort of document structure that your application is dealing with, you can still do that and you won't lose all the benefits of working with this data mapping layer. So I'm trying not to call this an ODM. I think I have done in some of the tutorials I've written around this, but if it is an ODM, it's with a focus on the M, the mapping. So it's an object document mapping library. And so the idea is that it's not just turning this document into this class. There's some extra stuff you can do. So let me show you one example that I'm quite proud of. It implements versioning. This is the schema versioning pattern that's in the Building with Patterns tutorial written by Daniel Kupel on Ken Alger. This, if you haven't read this before, this is absolutely like the core document for building systems with MongoDB. Because if you're just loading JSON in from files into MongoDB or storing data without really thinking about how you're representing it, you're not going to get the benefits as your application scales. You're going to start to come across limits in terms of the way it scales. It's going to cost you more in terms of your queries and things. If you want to store your data efficiently in terms of the amount of data that you're storing and how efficiently you can query it, there's a bunch of reusable patterns here that you can implement. So yeah, I've implemented schema versioning, or is it document versioning? I actually get those two confused. That's with this fall through field. So these where was this? Fall through field was up here, where you can have multiple field names, and it will try and look up full name. And then if full name it doesn't exist on the document that you're wrapping, it'll look up name. And only if that fails will it then throw an attribute error in the way that Python objects do. But fundamentally, it gives you an attribute called name that can cascade through a bunch of different fields in the underlying document. So this is kind of cool. I'm probably going to wrap this into the core field definition. I've got this sort of field definition that just says I'm defining a field called ID that maps to the underscore ID field in the underlying document. And this can do more stuff than this. And I want to make it as powerful as possible, just using the basic field, but also it's something you can extend to provide your own functionality. And that's something I've done with the sequence field. So the sequence field wraps an array. So if your document has an array in it, it will ensure that, for example, when you start iterating through the array, you get followers. So you don't just get subdocuments being exposed as dictionaries. It will yield followers until it gets to the end of the array. But this has a superpower. So the thing I abstracted a few weeks ago was the subset pattern, where perhaps you only store the first, let's say, 10 comments in a blog post. And then if somebody keeps scrolling down the page, then you need to load in some more from another collection. That you might have a followers collection. This is actually I'm losing the blog post analogy now. This is a user profile in a Twitter clone. So in this case, some of the followers are stored in an extra collection, and those can be looked up on demand. And if you want to look them up on demand, you can provide a query to do so. So this is where I said, we're not abstracting the aggregation framework. I'm just providing a function that will create an aggregation query. So in this case, it's looking up the user ID from this the document we're actually looking at, and using that to look up some of the followers for that user ID. So it gets executed against the followers collection automatically. And so as far as you're concerned, you have one single flat array containing all of your followers, but under the hood, it's doing this extra query to get extra data on demand. So it's kind of a lazy query request. And this is something, we get this question a lot when we're running webinars and things like that. How do I model my data if I've got a collection that will just keep on, an array stored in my document that could get really long? If it's going to get up to the 16 meg limit, how do I stop that from happening? This is effectively how you stop it from happening. You store the extra data in a separate collection and request it on demand. It's not quite as efficient, but you get that ability to scale as much as you need. One rule of thumb that we recommend at MongoDB is that you never have an array in your document that's got more than 200 items in it. So it's just sort of rule of thumb. It slows down traversal through the data. So it slows down any queries that are having to do document scans. So 200, anything that might ever get to 200 items, make sure you've got this escape hatch where you can store extra documents in another collection. So I've got some links to the videos here if you want to watch those. I need to add some more links. That's only the first 3 episodes, and this is episode 8 right now that we're running through. But don't worry, I will introduce you to the code that we'll be working with as we get to it. So what I'm in the middle of implementing at the moment is the ability to take a document, make some changes to the data that it's wrapping, and then have that data saved back in the database. Now, if we were just doing a very naive approach to this, we could take we could just update the data inside the instance, and then when somebody says save, we could just dump all of that and update the whole document. But we don't really want to do that. We want to just make the changes that we've made for efficiency's sake. There is another document that I think is really important on the MongoDB website, which was written by Paul Doan. He's written the 6 principles for building robust yet flexible shared data applications. The title is a bit of a mouthful, but it describes 6 principles for building services that can all work together on a shared database. And the one principle here that I find really important, there's a link to this in the description as well, just worth knowing. So the one that I find really important in here is only ask for fields that are your concern and always use in-place operators. So this means don't overwrite a document. If you're using a key value store, that's something you might have to do. Is just if you're updating a document, you have to overwrite the whole thing. But in this case, if you've got two microservices, let's say, and one's, let's say, a back-end service that stores like account data for a user, and the other one might store profile data, or it might work with profile data for a user, so public data. Those applications don't need to be in lockstep if they're not overwriting each other's data. So if somebody changes their username in one application, it shouldn't then just accidentally delete all of the account data that's being stored in the same document by a different application. So yeah, always use in-place operators. And that's what I'm trying to implement at the moment. So let me show you where we are. I have a breaking test. So let's run this test. This is in test docbridge. It's called test save, and it's down the bottom, I think. Oh, no, not quite the bottom. There we go. So this is my test function. If you've worked with PyTest, this should be relatively straightforward, hopefully. I am using fixtures that I've written myself in this PyTest test. Actually, that is something that we should cover. This fixture, MongoDB, provides a Mongo client from PyTest. That's all I'm implementing at the moment, is a blocking data access layer on PyTest. So I'm not thinking about asynchronous stuff at the moment because that just sort of doubles the complexity of this library. Once I feel like the ergonomics are coming together, then I'm going to start worrying about how I have this parallel behavior across blocking and async interfaces. So that gives me a client. This is one that I'm quite proud of. This is a rollback session. So this, if I ask for this, it will give me a session that if I provide it to all my queries. So let's say this one actually. It's rollback session. Session equals rollback session. Any updates that I do, any queries that I do will be within the context of this session, but then any changes I've made will be rolled back after my test is finished. So it just means that I can work directly with MongoDB, and at no point, at the end of the test, everything gets cleaned up, no matter really how the test finishes, because that's how transactions work, right? That's why I want to do these things in a transaction. Let me just show you that code, because I do quite like it, and it's not a lot of code, and I think it could be useful. So this is my MongoDB fixture that I've implemented in ConfTest. It's got session scope, so it's not going to keep on it's not going to create a new client for every test that uses it. It's going to reuse the same client across multiple tests just for efficiency. And it uses an environment variable for configuration. And then my other fixture, this is the one that's actually, I think, is quite clever. It uses the MongoDB fixture, and it uses that to start a session. It then yields it. So that's actually what's provided to the test. But it does that within a try finally. And when the test is over, it then calls abort transaction to just clean up any changes that's made in the database. So I have this really split feeling about tests in PyTest, because there's a bit, especially fixtures, they're a bit magic. At no point is this function really called with these values being passed in. They're just sort of dependency injection provided by PyTest, but they work so well in practice. I think, it's worth that sort of yielding to the magic of PyTest to get these benefits. So this is my test. I am creating profile. I'm configuring one field. This is a dynamic document, so I can dynamically add fields to it if I want to. And in fact, I'm doing that down here. So I'm adding a username value, or at least setting a value for username, even though it's not configured. The configuration here is really only to use to apply this transformation. So every time I save or retrieve the value of this field, it will be ensured that it's lowercase by calling the string lower function. So yeah, I connect to my database, or I get my database. I find one document, which is this user ID 4, and then I wrap it with this profile class that I've just defined up here. And then I'm calling set user ID, which is the configured field, and then set username, which is the dynamic one. And then I'm just checking that those values are stored in this internal field called _modified field. So this is how I'm keeping track of my changes on this instance. And when I run it, it's a failing test, which is, as I said earlier, a good place to start, right? So user ID is not working. I can tell you that username is. So let's just reorder this. I was actually fiddling with this test earlier today. Whoops. There we go. Username is working. So I'll just stick this up here to make sure that I don't break it by mistake. So yeah, I set it and then I ensure that it's in modified fields. And then I set, yes, then I set user ID. And then I don't think I can read my code. What's going on here? So I'm setting username to new value. Yeah. So I'm checking the old value, setting it to a new value, and then ensuring that it's in modified fields. So here I'm checking the old value. And am I ever setting it? Oh, maybe this actually solves some debugging that I thought I was going to have to do. So let's just change the value of this. And then I can do this assertion to check whether user ID has changed. So this actually may streamline the first half of today's stream. It's now working. So this is great. So I can set user ID, which is a configured field, or I can set username, which is dynamic field, and both of them get put in this modified fields dictionary. So let me just print that out so you can see it. Profile.modified fields. And then let me just fail this test so you can actually see what the output is. And I'll run this test again. If you're here watching the stream, we're streaming live on YouTube and LinkedIn today. Like, do drop into the chat or the comments like what your name is, where you're coming from, because otherwise I'm just kind of speaking to an empty screen. And it's really nice to see where people are coming from. It's just, I think the benefit of doing these things online rather than in person is often that there's this whole broad range of people in different time zones from around the world who benefit from it or enjoy it, and it's just really nice to see your presence online. So there we go. So this is the dictionary that I've just printed out. It's got a username, which is new value, and a user ID of new value. I've made a rookie mistake here with my test of the fact I've set them to the same value. So if there's one stepping on the other, hi Abdul, we've got Abdul from Nigeria. Thank you for joining us today. Great to have you here. That's one of the things. Yeah, and we've got James from Kenya. I was at DjangoCon Africa late last year in Zanzibar, and it was really brought home to me that we're all in the same kind of time zone, and we should be spending time together online, even though we're physically a very long way apart. And so that's kind of cool. And then we have my friend and colleague Luce, who is watching from Dublin. Luce is keeping an eye on the comments and just making sure there's not people spamming the comments. So thank you for that, Luce. Really, really appreciate it. Yeah, Luce, of course, you're in Dublin. Luce is on a trip to Dublin at the moment, normally in England. This has actually thrown me for a loop. So I thought we were going to have to debug and fix this, and I was going to find that kind of infuriating. But in fact, we can move to the next step, which is taking this data and building an update query, which is something I haven't practiced today. I usually kind of have a quick prototype of the code I'm planning to write to make sure that it sort of comes together reasonably smoothly, but I haven't done that today. So let's move on to the next part of this test. So we check the modified fields. This profile should have a save function, and I'm going to give it, a collection. Am I going to give it a collection? This is really tricky. So these documents, let's have a look at the document. So I'm just going to log in on a different screen. Excuse me while I log into Atlas, something I usually do before the stream, and I forgot to do it today. So I'm just going to have to click through some screens to get to my collection so that I can show you kind of what the original document looked like. being a bit of a flake today. Do apologize. Hope you're enjoying the stream. There we go. Is this going to work? There we go. It's just verifying my identity. Oops. So. I'm always terrified of revealing a password or something like that, and I don't even use a password for logging into Atlas anymore. It's all done through passkeys, which is really cool. So I've got my browse collections on my sandbox, and I'm going to look at, what am I looking at? I'm looking at Y. There we go, right down the bottom. So these are my followers. There's a joke along. Oh, and Saeed, we've got Saeed from Oakland. Thanks for joining us, Saeed. And we've got somebody whose name is probably not actually Noob Dev, but welcome to the stream, Mr. Dev, Ms. Dev. It's great to have you here as well. I hope you enjoy the stream. This is very much an intermediate sort of Python stream, but if there's anything that you don't understand about either Python or MongoDB, feel free to drop in a question. I'm happy to take a break from writing code and answer any questions you might have, ideally around the project that I'm working on, but potentially we can have some downtime answering some slightly random MongoDB questions. So this is my profiles collection. And in here, I have one with a user ID of 4. So you'll notice this isn't the primary key. It's another field. And I just happen to be looking this one up because in my tests, because it's got a nice selection of data and it has a decent number of followers. So this actually, this rolled over to store extra followers in the followers collection, which is over here. So you'll find that there's a document, at least one document in here with a user ID of 4. In fact, 2. There's 2. So one's got 20 and one's got 19. So together, these make up all of the rest of the followers for this user profile. I wrote a Python script that generates all of this fake data so that I could get this sort of random spread of different follower profiles or user profiles. This is the data. We have got an underscore ID, and that is actually retrieved by the query. So I'm guessing, I suppose, that this document doesn't know where it's stored. It's like all I've passed it is a single MongoDB document that it then wraps. So I guess when I save, I'm going to have to tell it what collection to save to for the sort of the basic use case. So I'm going to have to go profile, save, and then I'm going to tell it where to save to. Just going to tell it to save straight back to profiles, and I'm going to give it a session equals rollback session. So that's going to be an optional variable, much like it is with, let's say, calling update on a MongoDB collection in PyMongo. And then I obviously have to implement this now. So it has to go through the modified field, build up an update command, and then actually execute it. So let's see how that goes. I'm going to command click through. There we go. No, that has it taken me through document? Yeah, no, it doesn't know what it's doing. So let's go back to here. All my code is in the dunder init file at the moment. It's only 200 lines of code. Is that an only? There's some pretty magic stuff in here. So we've got dunder get for dynamically looking stuff up. That was on sequence field. So that means that sequence field is a descriptor. So that's if you don't know what the descriptor protocol is, definitely go and look that up. It's like the magic of Python for creating things on demand or generating things on demand. It's if you've ever used Django models before and wondered how you can configure a field somewhere, and then later on when you access it, you get the actual values from database records. Like that's all using Python's descriptor protocol, which is like, it's just really cool. So I've got a few of these field definitions, and then I've got the document itself, which is the wrapper, and it wraps a PyMongo doc. So essentially a dictionary. It also keeps a reference to the PyMongo database. And now I'm storing these modified fields. So if anybody set any values, then it all gets stored in this dictionary. Still not entirely certain that's the right approach. Like, this is very much a bit of an experiment. We're going to see how that all works out. So the way I'm updating modified fields is in setatta. So basically, if anybody tries to set field, providing it's allowed to set dynamic fields, it will just set it directly in here, and also on the underlying document, so that still maps to what you'd expect. While you're here, just like to say hello to Venkata. Welcome to the stream. Hope you're enjoying it. I'm just about to actually start really writing code. So, ooh, look at this. I have already started writing a save function. And so we've got, this is, yeah, I honestly don't, I think I started this at the end of the last stream, but I actually seem to be making the same kind of decisions, which is good. So I've said this is the collection I want to update, but I've also said there's this optional match criteria. So when this is thinking a little bit ahead, when I want to write my update directly against PyMongo, I need match criteria. So I need to say what documents I want to update, and then I give it a set of commands that I actually want to run. So in this case, this would be modified fields. So that underlying document maps directly to the document that, in this case, was stored in the database. As I said, really, these documents you should consider to be the result of a query, which can involve doing, my mind's just gone blank, excuse me, projections. It can involve grouping if you're doing aggregation. It can involve bucketing, all those things. Essentially, a lot of those queries are creating new documents from, like, munging together data that's in different places in your database. So I have that. What I didn't do was I did not pass in a session. So that's great. I can now pass that into this commented out update. Session. So it's going to be important to me to check after I've run this test the first time that my document in the Atlas interface is still, it's been left as in its clean state, so it shouldn't contain new value at all. Right, let's. So here we go. If match criteria is none, then we basically set it to the underscore ID. So we have to get the underscore ID from the primary key from the underlying document. That makes sense, but in some cases you're not going to have that. And so I should probably, what am I going to do? Raise an error. I think if there's no underscore ID in the underlying document, it should definitely raise an exception. So try. I can't remember what this raises if it can't find the item. Well, I'm just going to write a hacky exception catch here, and then I'm going to raise my own exception with hopefully as a more contextually useful message. So attempt to update a document without underscore ID and without providing match criteria. So hopefully that'll be useful to somebody who makes this mistake. Almost certainly going to be me. I think I may be the only user of this library so far. If you want to see this library in action, join us next week at the same time, 5 p.m. UTC on Thursday, and I'm hoping to build or update a fast API application using this data access layer and talking about some of the best practices for architecting in a data access layer into a sort of real world application. I said there was a joke. There's this joke in the database that I've called it Y, and this is because it's a Twitter clone, and Twitter has been renamed to X, and I've renamed mine to Y, the word Y, because obviously that's the letter after X, and also it's a question, which I feel is valid. If you think that's funny, feel free to stick a silly emoji in the chat. I have told that joke now, I think 3 times on the stream, and obviously just to an empty room. So it's like the worst way to tell a joke. And then I probably laughed at my own joke, which is a really bad thing to do. So I've uncommented my update. I've passed it $set. Now we know what the modified fields is essentially just, oh yes, why is it called X is what Luce has just said. It's, Luce thinks it's a good joke. So yeah, there we go. I always knew you had a good sense of humor, Luce. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, we know that modified fields is essentially these are the fields that we want to update with the values we want to update them to. So that's pretty cool. Let's try it, shall we? Let me update my test. Seeing as we're now modifying the database, I go back to my test. Here's where I'm calling save. I'm not providing the selection criteria. Was it selection criteria? Match criteria. Because I don't need to, hopefully. But what should happen is that if I do another query with the same session here, and I've actually done it up here. So if I do this query here, this will give me a single PyMongo document. So I'm not going to wrap it just because it adds extra abstraction, like, places for errors to be, difficult to track down. Should I call it doc? Yeah, call it doc. That's a good name. And it is the same document. I want to check that that document's been updated. So then I want to check that assert doc, and then I'm going to look up the field by name, user ID equals, it should be user name. Oh, that shouldn't be, oh no, it shouldn't be username. Sorry. New ID value. So this is the thing that I didn't do here. Value, and this will be new name value. So I'm, I know that if one of these is stepping on the other test's foot, then I will know about it. Oh, no. Username. Oh, I'm not checking the value. And I'm not checking the value there. That's fine. It'll be checked when it comes back from the database. If this doesn't work, then I might have to go back a bit and add a little bit more, sort of a few more assertions in here to make sure it's doing the right thing. New ID value, and then this should be new name value, and it should be stored on user underscore name. Whew. Anybody else feeling the tension around this? I got the session. That was a mistake I made in a previous session, and I wasn't sure how I wasn't sure why it wasn't reflecting my changes in the query, but somebody in the chat helped debug my problem, which was pretty awesome. So here I'm going to run my test again. Collection object is not callable. How often do I do that? I do that all the time. So why sounds so much more engaging? Yep. Thank you. And hello, Eduardo. Where are you joining us from, Eduardo? I hope you're enjoying the stream. We are just about to debug where I'm trying to call a collection. So if you meant to call the update collection, I think it should be update 1. So I don't know if any of you have ever done live streaming before. I know Luce has. Luce is very experienced at live streaming. It does tend to turn your brain to mush. So things that I should really know as a reasonably advanced MongoDB developer, just sort of like, disappear from your brain. So there we go, calling update 1 instead of update. I'm going to blame that on past mark because that code was written a couple of weeks ago. So here we go. 4 equals, so 4 does not equal the new ID value. I'm going to just print out the document. So there's a few places that this could be caused, I guess. So we are getting the full document. That's nice. Oh, I could pretty print this, couldn't I? Shall I do that? I think I should do that. That's, so for those of you who may not be Python developers, print just gives you sort of flat, unformatted output. But core Python feature. Itatools is core Python. I need to rearrange my imports. This is poor. There's a pprint module, or I can import a function called pprint from it. There was a point in time where some of the core Python modules followed this kind of convention. Like the datetime module does the same thing. It's got a datetime item inside the datetime module, and it just makes the code more complicated. But it's a bit late to fix it now. Use the arrow module, arrow package. Arrow package is really nice for dealing with dates. Robert has suggested that pair programming temporarily reduces the IQ of the most experienced developer by a minimum of 20 points, and that's well known. Thank you for that, Robert. That's very reassuring, actually. I appreciate that. And hello, Vina. Nice to have you here. So currently in debugging, I know that's just the most exciting thing to do on a live stream is watch somebody solve a problem. If anybody is sort of thinks they've spotted the problem, do let me know, because this is now becoming slightly frustrating. Although I have been told in the past that it's very useful to watch an experienced Python developer sort of fail in public. It reminds people that as somebody with 24 years experience of writing Python can still forget to put the colons at the end of function definitions, which I still do regularly. So yeah, maybe this is what Copilot's for. Maybe that's supposed to stick the colons at the end of function definitions. So yeah, we're just getting back the data that we had before and not the data that I think we updated. So right, a bit more debugging. When we do the update, which is actually in here, I'm gonna print out the result of that. So this gets is it called? I think it's called an update result. It might even tell me if I hover. Apparently not. But I can just print that out, and it will tell me how many documents were updated. So let's just see what we get. It should be up here before we went to get the document back in. Update result, as I said, and it updated 0 documents. So that's the problem. It's sort of great to know. So I'm going to print out the match criteria, I guess. I mean, I could just run this test instead of all my tests, but there's something reassuring about running all the tests. So I have an object ID. I'm now wondering whether I'm actually running this on the wrong collection. Let's just check. Is it profiles I'm updating? Why did it end up there? Test. Yeah, okay, updating profiles. It's all good. It's all good. And I'm saving profiles, and I'm originally getting it from profiles. Yep. So that's one thing ruled out. It is possible that I'm doing something wrong with my transaction. So let's just check that the rollback session is in there. Rollback session, original query, rollback session. Okay. In a moment, what I may do is take out the session from the update, and just see actually if it does. Yeah, let's see if it updates, if there's something wrong with the transaction. But I don't think it is the transaction. I think it's something else. So let's just have a look at this. It begins with 657 and it ends with D70. Let's go into the web interface and have a look at my profile. 657. D70. So this is really This is really interesting. Why is it not finding that? Let's Robert has said, in the end, it's not about the data that we've updated, but the transactional errors we've encountered and learned from along the way. Yep, it's all about the journey. And Luce is backing me up that it's easy to update the wrong collection. Yeah, silly mistakes. It's par for the course. It's I I have a friend who did a boot camp recently, so she's very much coming into being a professional developer. She's changed careers, and she was saying at one point that she was looking forward to the time when programming becomes less frustrating, and then wondered why all of the developers in the room were gently laughing at her. And then we explained it doesn't really get less frustrating. You just end up making usually more complex errors. Let's see, we've got 18 minutes left of the stream. Let me see if we can find out what's going on here. So I'll stop yakking quite so much and try to narrow this down. So this is essentially code. So let's just get it by ID. I'm going to do that after the update's made. Oh no, because we know no, actually before the update's made, because we know that the update is not updating anything, because that's what that 0 means, N0. At least I think it is. Updated existing, acknowledged, signature, timestamp. I could have pretty printed that as well, couldn't I? That would have been a bit better. Although, as far as I'm aware, it's not actually a dict, so no, it's just a class, so it would have printed it the same. 0 modified. Yeah, okay. Right, I am going to just after it was saved, I'm gonna do oops. Ooh. Find one. Yeah, this is all good. Sorry, I'm copy and pasting. This, where's save done? There. Oh, actually, I'm doing it there. But anyway, this is temporary. And I'm just going to put some code in here. Hey, Megan, great to see you. Thank you for joining. So Megan has, I think, is it a series of YouTube videos on learning to code? So that's something you started recently. So yeah, I haven't actually watched any yet, I'll admit, but I will at some point, because I think that's just really a really interesting journey. Yeah, you've joined me, Megan. If you just joined, I have some code that's not working and I'm desperately trying to find out why, which seems to be where I spend all my time these days. But let's just track this down. So basically, I'm updating a document. It's not updating any documents. So it's basically not finding the right documents. So I'm just trying to track down why by copying and pasting code from different places. So I got this object ID. I don't think I have that imported yet. So just going to test that. Object ID is not imported. Can I get VS Code to import it for me? No, I can't. No, I can't. I'm going to have to do that myself. Oh, I haven't actually got PyMongo imported at all, because everything's abstracted. Everything's abstracted. Actually, because I am doing this here, I am going to just do the import inside my function. Keep it local, and then I can clean it up later if necessary. So from bson import, is it? It's not the top. There we go. There we go. It is imported from the top level. So I'm doing my query directly against the primary key, and then I just want to check that it comes back with something. So result equals that, and then we'll just assert result is not none. May fail, and if it's not none, then we'll just print the result. Yay, print statements. Whoa, that wasn't the thing that I wanted to do. I wanted to run PyTest. So running my tests again, and oh, I think that passed. So I've got an update against this value, and it's not coming back with anything. And then I've got a get, and it is coming back with something. Is it possible that it's not passing the session in? Could be. I'm just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. This is too much information now. Like, this is you get to this stage. So this line here is line 259. So it's failing here, but I am getting a result back when I search for this object. I should really do a projection to get rid of the followers field, which is really what most of this noise is. So let's just and I can pretty print it as well. I'm doing a find one. So it takes first parameter is the query that you're running. Second parameter, if you provide it, is a projection. So I can just say, I don't want followers. I like being unpopular. Set that to 0. And I think I can do the same thing down here as well. So the way projections work is if you specify all zeros as values, you're just saying, I want all of the fields, but not the ones I've specified. If you specify 1 for any of them, then you're specifying that these are the fields I want. So from that point on, you have to build up every field that you want. You have to provide 1. The only exclusion is underscore ID. Underscore ID, even if you're building up your projection. So you're saying I do want this field and this field and this field, you'll get underscore ID automatically unless you explicitly set it as 0. So then, if you really don't want underscore ID, then set it to 0. Usually you want to keep underscore ID around. It's a small value and it helps you link your data directly back to where it came from. So it's just a good practice. Right. So this is my document that's coming. So that's my update result, which is I didn't update anything. And I know that my query was this, but when I run that query again, which is this query, I actually get back a document. Oh, this is very frustrating. So let's hope I can debug. I've got 10 minutes now, more or less, to debug this. What is going on? Let's go back through, have a look at save. So at this point, I'm looking at profiles. I'm finding... No. Sorry, I'm now in the wrong file. Command click is not working for me in VS Code today. So I got my match criteria. We know that the match criteria is... I have to say, I've done nearly 8 hours of these live streams so far, and I feel like this is the most stuck I've been. So we'll just see how that goes. Hopefully I can fix it. So we've got the match criteria here. I'm going to run my test again. Whee! They're running fast enough. I can just afford to run all of them. Match criteria, definitely that. This is bizarre. Update 1. There's my match criteria. And it's taking the session that's passed in. All right, let's print the session, I guess. Because the session's important. No, even then, even if it was doing it outside the session, that ID should still be valid. Why is collection... Oh, loose, I am updating the wrong collection. Oh, this is so silly. So I'm accessing this by name. So actually it's looking up a collection called collection and trying to update that. So in fact, this should be get collection. And then I pass it in the name of the collection that I want to update. And then this is going to work. See how confident I am? No, it's not going to work. But it's different bug. It's a different bug. Right. So we're moving forwards. That's good. I'm trying to look something up on none. I don't know where this none is coming from. Let's go and have a look at the error. Ooh, that's actually a type error. Type error in 261 of test docbridge. So let's go and have a look at that line. What? That's not doing that. That's 261 type error. 26. It's actually this line that's failing. Don't know why the line numbers don't match up. But this is all good. So I'm getting none back when I look up user ID 4. So this is now just a different weirdness. Right. Find one, user ID 4. This is definitely in the right collection. Why am I not getting back? Oh, look, for some reason, I'm doing this query twice as well. So I can pre-print my doc, and my doc is none. So that's basically what's happening here, getting none back. Appreciate the victory, Robert. Let's see if we can get this all the way home. Save doc, and then I feel like that should say none. Why did that not say none? Doc. Maybe it's just because I'm using pprint and not print. There we go. Save doc none. Why is it save doc none? DB collection profiles. Find one, user ID 4. Let's go and have a look at the collection in Atlas and just kind of check. This is JavaScript or JSON, so I can leave out the quotes on the keys because, you know, they're object literals rather than dictionaries. It just leads to laziness, doesn't it? So this is actually coming back with something. So I must be doing something silly. What am I doing that's silly? So I've got my database, looking up my collection, doing find one. I did add this. Should I take that out? I feel like still getting the same thing. Let's do an assert doc is not none. Assert none is not none. Whoa. That's not right. Sorry. It auto-completed me. Visual Studio Code does do some weird stuff sometimes. And yeah, that's my own fault for not reading the code that I'm writing. So find one. Let's try taking out the session and see if that solves the problem. It would be something that I didn't understand, but at least it's the session. Why are we having problems with the session? So I have that is very interesting. Oh, wait, I've changed the user ID. What am I doing? I've modified the user ID as part of the test. So the user ID should now be this new ID value. So if I do a query for user ID equals new ID value, this is cutting it fine. I have 5 minutes to finish up this live stream, but I have to say, if I can finish on a success, I'll be very pleased. There we go. We've got updates happening. Thank you so much, everybody, for bearing with me for the last 10, 15 minutes as we solve those cascading problems. I will go through, clean up the prints and potentially the imports as well, and the extra queries that aren't necessary. So got start and end temp. Get rid of that. Isn't it nice when you get to delete code? I always think that's the most valuable service I can offer as a software developer, is to make there less code in the world. Thank you, Anirudh. Very, very kind of you. Yeah, this is very satisfying. So I hope you get what we've accomplished today. We've got we have this object that we can make changes to. Those specific changes are recorded in the instance, and then we can essentially replay those changes against our database. The last thing we want to do actually in here is reset modified fields. So once they've saved, we know that our data in the document reflects the data in the collection. And so in theory, at least, this document no longer needs it can have an empty modified field. So I'm not going to return the modified fields. I think that was something I did for debugging. And then I can actually set that as a test in my tests. How's this? 4 minutes to go. Assert doc modified fields equals. There we go. Is this going to work? Because I'm just setting myself up for failure. So it's not doc. Sorry, it's profile. Profile is my actual class that I've constructed. There we go. Phew. There we go. Cutting it fine. So thank you very much for coming, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the stream today. The numbers have been pretty constant throughout the stream, so that's really good. That implies that at least everybody else was sitting on the edge of their seat, seeing if I could solve this problem. I really appreciated the interaction in the chat. It's been really nice having certain comments around flying nuns, and thank you for coming along, Megan. Yeah, it's. I feel like this is now building on like 7 hours of work in the live stream. So I'm starting to think that I need to maybe offer some sort of easier way into the code base than just kind of what people drop into if it's their first stream. Thanks very much for joining us, Robert. I'm really glad you enjoyed the stream, and really look forward to seeing you again. Next week, it's going to be a bit more practical, right? I'm going to be taking this library and we're going to be applying it in Fast API and just sort of seeing how it feels, and how it abstracts, like working with PyMongo directly. So that's my aim, really, is that we can start to model these relatively complex patterns in certain cases in the database, but the document model is just, it's a declaration. So you declare how your data in your application maps to your data in your database. And at the same time, we're kind of following best practices along Paul Doan's 6 principles of resiliency. That's how I shortened that really long title, if you were here early in the call, and implementing these various patterns that we've identified over the years for sort of making your data storage, data queries more efficient. So Anirudh is asking if it's the same time next week. So it's next week. I did skip last week because I wasn't feeling very well. It was all a bit last minute. So if you were planning to come along to that, I apologize for that. We've also been moving around dates and days and times a little bit. Next week is Thursday, 5 p.m. Assuming I don't get hit by a bus, I'm going to be here. Really excited to kind of build up this Twitter clone and actually talk about some of the architectural decisions that Twitter have made themselves. I can't bring myself to call it X. I do apologize. If you're a fan of the new name, you're just going to have to put up with me calling it Twitter. There's some really interesting data modeling problems around building something like a scalable microblogging service. And we're going to be talking through both the way that big companies have solved this problem and also the way you can implement these in MongoDB. So Venkata has just asked if I can go through the silly mistakes and correction. So yeah, I possibly did just do that a bit quickly. Let's run over by 1 minute, I think, and just cover that. So the mistake was I was updating the wrong collection. So this line here was actually doing a lookup. It was, instead of doing what I've got there, where it's calling get collection to get the collection, it was doing self.db.collection. Now, PyMongo has some magic here. It actually uses some of the techniques I've used in my library. So if you look up something by name that doesn't exist, and database doesn't have an attribute called collection, what it actually does is behind the scenes, it calls this function. And it passes it the name of the thing that you've just looked up. And in PyMongo's case, what it does is it goes, oh, they want a collection called collection, and it creates one and hands it to you, because PyMongo and MongoDB are really dynamic like that. But it's a really easy mistake to make. As you can see, I made that mistake, and I'm a pretty experienced MongoDB developer. So yeah, if I had done _db dot hello, Halo, it would have handed me back a collection called Hello that I can then insert documents into. And it would have been created as soon as I wanted to modify it, like creating an index, adding a document to it. We would now have a collection in the web interface. I could just refresh this, and it would have a collection there. Because I didn't successfully make any writes, I don't think I have, So in fact, let me just refresh and see. I don't think I accidentally created a collection called collection. So no, there's a few in here. You can see that I use this for a bunch of my test projects. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen. Thank you for that, Anirudh. Apologize. I'm talking about code that you're not looking at. So yeah, I was saying this when it was self_db collection. That was just creating a collection called collection dynamically, because that doesn't exist. Whereas get collection does exist. That's actually a function, and you can call it. So yeah, it was a silly mistake, and it took me a while to find it. It's ironic, really, because the first thing I did, if you remember, was looking to see if I was writing to the right collection, and I just misread what that line was doing. So there we go. It's easy to make mistakes, but if you have decent test coverage. Now I am sharing my screen. Too many screens. If you have good test coverage, you know that you've made these mistakes. So one of the things I'm quite proud of with this library is I've more or less been doing test-first development. So I've got nice test coverage, also kind of documents the features of the library and how to use stuff. So it makes some sort of, I've extracted some useful example code into the README, and I'll be doing some more of that in the next week to just prepare for next week's session. So yeah, we're 2 minutes over. I'm going to have to go. Thank you very much for coming. It's been great to see you all in the chat, and hopefully catch you all at 5 p.m. UTC next week. In the meantime, have a good week. Take care.